Knowing how to turn your Fusion comps into macros is one of the most important things for you to know as an editor using Davinci Resolve. A macro is a collection of nodes from the Fusion page that allows you to actually access those from the edit page. The macro itself is just something contained inside of Fusion, but you're able to actually access it as a template on the edit page for it to either be a generator, a title, a transition, or an effect. All of these interact with your clips in different ways. Titles use the basis of a text plus node to create the actual effect. This is obviously generated just for title effects, but you can put any effect into this category. A generator is a Fusion comp that creates a clip on your timeline just like the text plus effect and allows you to have custom Fusion effects over a bunch of clips at one time. An effect is something that gets applied to a single clip at a time and controls just that one clip in an isolated environment. And then a transition is a Fusion comp that just goes between two clips with some sort of animation. All of these types of effects allow you to have controls on the edit page that control the nodes within Fusion. So you can have easy customizable effects from the edit page for anybody to use. You can even sell these or give these away. How do you learn more about macros? To start, obviously there's the place of my YouTube channel. I got tons of videos already about macros and a lot more to come, so stay tuned for those and enjoy the ones that already exist. But besides that, we have something like built-in docs in the actual Davinci Resolve program. If you come on up here to help, come down here to documentation, come down here to developer, it'll bring up this folder right here. This is where all the APIs are that you're able to read up on, see examples for, and a bunch of other stuff. Fusion templates right here are macros or DRFX files and all that kind of stuff. We come into here and we have a README file and two example folders. The README file right here goes into great detail about how to make macros, building them out with an example macro here, talking about the differences between all the different types of macros you can make, talking about some modifiers and how they can be used easily, some icons, the paths for things, and also talking about DRFX bundles. This is a great resource to learn about the general overall idea of how to make macros. Most of the knowledge you can actually find about macros is sometimes a little more hidden. You can go into any of these and take a look at the examples. We have a noise dissolve node right here. You can go into a Fusion comp, drag the settings file into the Fusion comp, and then you can actually see how it interacts with things. We can see I just have text going through here just saying test, and if we start messing with any of these things, I actually missed this. You also need to have a background node, so something else needs to be going into this. This is a transition, so if you put this into your transitions folder, this would work. But if we play through this example right here, we can see from the top down it starts to actually override the text with my background. And they made this a group operator, so we can actually open it up and see the dissolve node and fast noise nodes that are in here. We can see the instance controls over here, a custom page right here, and we can get a good idea of how it all works if we open this up in a text editing program. We can see all the inputs, all the outputs, the view info, all the tools that are inside the macro, and then any modifiers or any other user controls or anything else that's on the macro itself. If we take a look at the inputs, we can see there's the ID right here. It says what it is. It's an instance input. We get the source OP, which is the node it comes from. We see it's fast noise 1. And then source is the control ID that we're instancing, and that's gradient type. And then we can also change the name of it with the name operator right here. We can also set new defaults right here for values and strings. We can set control groups for things like RGB and various things like that. There's a lot that we can do with these instance inputs. All of the controls come from either nodes or modifiers from the actual Fusion comp inside of the macro. They can either be built-in inputs on the nodes and modifiers originally, or user controls that you create yourself. Besides the documentation built into Resolve, we also have many external websites that allow us to figure out this stuff as well. So we have We Suck Less right here. This is a great forum with a lot of amazing, brilliant people on here. Really smart people that can really help you out in a pinch, but also there's lots of already written stuff that helps out beginners, and that's what we're looking at today. So if we scroll down here on the main page, down to the Fusion scripting fuses and macros, we can come into here, and this is where all of the nice beginner stuff is for what you guys will need. Right here we have macro building essentials a little bit farther down the page. Click into this and we have an entire intro to what macros are and some beginner introduction on how to use them. There's also some examples like this right here, along with a lot of advanced examples and other things like that. This is 7 years old, so a lot of this stuff at the beginning here can be out of date, but generally macros haven't changed that much since then. Another fantastic resource we have is actually right here on the We Suck Less forum as well. We click this link drop down right here. You have to have an account to see this. Come down here to the VFXpedia and click this. We'll get sent to this really old looking wiki page. This was the original wiki page for Fusion. and all Fusion developer information. For us, all we have to do is come on over here to the settings and macros, and we can find what we're looking for. This wiki was graciously restored by the people on the We Suck Less forums. Huge thank you to all of you guys who helped out with that project. Not every single website is restored, but there's not a whole lot you can do. This is a pretty old website, and I'm sure a lot of it was just lost to time. If we scroll through this page here that we click on, we can see a bunch of examples. If you click on these, it'll start downloading them. Some of them may not work just because of age, but if we keep going down, we'll eventually find a tips section where it actually has the original macro tutorial with a bunch of other details in here about how to make macros and how to use them, and about macro groups and a bunch of other really helpful stuff for macros. This is very old. This page itself was last updated in 2013, so some of this stuff is probably a little bit out of date. You might find more up-to-date stuff on the We Suck Less forum and other places like that. If you're looking to do the most up-to-date stuff with macros today, my channel probably is the best place to find all that knowledge collected together. I've gone over macros, learned macros myself by breaking them down and teaching myself how to use that knowledge to make really cool stuff. So while all of this stuff is very helpful, the best way to learn more about macros is to learn from someone else's macro. In that train of thought, let's go ahead and bring in Magic Animate V3 and take a look at that. To actually look and break down a macro, you have to just find the macro button, the fusion button. If this is a generator, it's going to be on the main screen. So if we come into here with the solid color, the controls are going to be over here on the video section. But for effects, we just go into the effects panel and find all the controls in here. And we can find the fusion button right here and hop right into there. This is the media in one of the clip actually on the timeline, and then this is the actual macro itself. So when you package up your macro, you don't include a media in one, you just include the input, and you don't include your media out node either because you just include the output for that. When you add in the effect into the actual effects folder, it will create these two nodes for you. If we look at this node right here, the actual macro, this is a macro operator. This is an enclosed group. We cannot actually access the nodes inside. To actually open this up now, we can copy the node out with either a Control-C or right-click and then copy up here. Go into a text editor and paste in that text. Now we can actually scroll through here and see all of the actual macro contained inside of that one little node. Come on up here at the top of your file next to the actual ID of the macro and change macro operator to group operator. Select everything again and copy it with Control-C or right click and copy once again. Delete this node and paste in your new one, and then we can connect everything back up. Everything's going to look and act exactly the same. Double click on the actual group now to open it up. We can see all the nodes that are contained inside. And yes, this is all the nodes that Alex took to make Magic Animate V3. Once you have the group open, take a look at all the nodes with these triangles and look for any nodes that either have animations or modifiers on certain controls. Take a look at those modifiers and actually take a look and see what they're doing. If you see any expressions like this, feel free to copy the expression with clicking into this once and then pressing Control-A and then doing Control-C to copy all the text. Paste this into a text editor and start to lay this out so it's easier to read. If you're familiar with Lua syntax, just look for whenever you would see a new line and press the new line. Once you have everything laid out where it's easier to read, you can see this is very, very easy to understand what's going on. We can see through this area, we are just double checking these things and seeing, is something happening? Is something equaling other things? Then just return with this other value. If all of these things are failed, then let's actually do the calculation right here. We start with the calculation with the frame rate. We figure more calculations out for the actual animation, and then we come down here to the end and then return this finalized math equation. This is technically the expression that is returned to that expression box with all the calculations happening behind the scenes. This is all the calculation that's happening. This is the actual expression that's being sent out. Also look around for any nodes that are disabled and not in the flow. Generally, these are either going to have user controls or buttons on them. If you want to learn more about how the buttons work, you can always copy this node out and put it into another text document and either scroll through and look for the buttons or search for the names of the buttons. So if we look back here in Fusion, we can see enable mids is one of the buttons we can actually look for. We do a Control F and type in enable mids, and we can see we have links enable mids. That means this must be the button right here. You can then copy this code and put it into a new document and then separate out the lines just like you did with the expression so you can actually start to see what's going on. We can see right here, this is setting a bunch of pass-throughs to either true or false, and then setting a couple inputs for the actual animations. This is a great time to talk about the different controls on a macro. Controls in the actual code is oftentimes called inputs. On a macro, there are two distinct kind of inputs. There are instance inputs, and then there are user controls, or user inputs. On Magic Animate V3 right here, we can see everything on this is actually an instance input. There is no user control on this. If we copy out the node again, pasting it into our editor, we can scroll up here and actually start to collapse the different sections just like we did at the beginning. We can collapse the inputs, the outputs, the view info, the tools, and then any other modifiers and anything else on the actual macro. As we can see, there's nothing at the bottom of this list. It's just all these modifiers and then our regular sections right here. If we look at this tool right here, we can see there is a button up here in the very top. And I'll clue you in, this is a great indicator that there's a user control on this macro. User controls have the special unique ability to actually go on these top sections of your macros. So above the actual pages, you can slap buttons, images, controls, anything you want at the very top. If you look at immediate end node, we have the clip name up here at the very top, and there's also in and out points that get added whenever an actual clip is inside of here. But for my screen utility tool right here, this tutorial button is up here in the top section. So how do we do that? Let's take a look at the bones of our macro once again. We take in the inputs, the outputs, the view info, the tools. We are left with the user controls of the macro. We also have left and right viewers right here for audio display. Don't worry about that. But this right here is the section where the buttons is stored. We have our user control section, it's ordered, and it ends right there. We have this one ID of tutorial, and we have all the stuff in here. This is the same button code that we looked at before with the btncs execute as button code right here. And this control right here is what puts it on to the top part of your macro. Let's give you a quick overview of all the different sections of a macro itself. The inputs are all of the controls and triangles you will see on your actual node. The triangles themselves, the yellow, blue, green, whatever triangles, those are called inputs as well. Those make a little more sense. But all of the controls themselves are also called inputs. Those inputs control different values, the text, the actual options of like a checkbox or a drop-down menu, and those can be from the actual nodes and modifiers themselves as built-in controls or user controls. All of these in the input section are instance inputs. Even if they're the input of a triangle, they're still an instance of that input. And then the outputs are the squares on the macro, along with a few other things like LUTs and a couple other various Fusion-specific things like that. The view info just has to do with where it is actually in the flow. So if we take a look at this one right here, we can see it has flags, it has a position, the size, the direction, and a bunch of other important information right here for Fusion to read. And then we have the tools section. This is all of the tools inside of the actual macro itself. So we have an alpha divide node, a published number right here. All of these will have the inputs, and these inputs will have values and expressions and sources and all sorts of stuff. And at the very end of this macro list, we have user controls. This is where all of the custom controls go that you make on a macro. You can do this by adding this section yourself, or in Fusion, you can right click, go up here to edit controls, and then add your own control into this list. It will then add the user control section to the very bottom of that .setting file and allow you to add more stuff into there manually if you would like. In a future video, I'll be going over how to actually make all these different macro types individually, because we have 4 for the edit page and then 1 for the actual Fusion page. The Fusion page one being just a macro of just being basically a brand new node inside of Fusion with other nodes inside of it. And of course, all the 4 edit page ones I've already talked to you about: effects, generators, titles, and transitions. That video will be coming out hopefully very soon. If you're brand new to making macros and you don't want to learn the actual code to making the macros, or if you're getting tired of having to type out all that code all the time to make the same sort of effects, I want to announce the new macro creator. This is a tool that I created that makes macros way faster. You don't have to be in the code at all when making your macros now. You just use the new macro creator, and all the same effects you'd usually be writing in the code with can be done with just a simple GUI. You just add the controls you want from the nodes into the list in the order you want. Add yourself any custom controls like labels, separator lines, images, and buttons. You can add the expressions, button code, and text on every other node inside of your comp, and way more. Go ahead and check that out down in the description. I have a link down there that takes you to my website. I have a 50% off your entire cart deal going on right now when you order something from my store for Black Friday. This is going on until December 7th. Go ahead and check those out down below. But if you're just not done with learning about about macros and you just are dying to learn more, go and check out this video right here to get started with actually my series on making macros from start to finish. Or you can check out this video over here where I start to introduce more about the new macro creator, what you can do with it, all the cool things with it, and why you should get it. But alright, go and check out these videos, and I'll see you next time. Happy animating!